Hey everybody, we are here today to talk a little bit about pricing strategies for SaaS-based businesses. And with us today we have Ryan Susanna here to share some of his experience and the things that he's hearing when he's talking to customers. So Ryan, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Tim. Glad to be here.
Great. So I think what I want to do is kind of jump into some of the types of conversations that you're having with our clients. And a lot of times we are finding companies that are looking to roll out new pricing strategies. It's one of the reasons why they're looking for a new billing system. And wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, strategies and how you roll those out. And one of the things there is getting it right out of the gate. When you're starting off and figuring out to do it right. Why is it so important to be able to figure it out before you start rolling out?
Well, it's an interesting question. I actually think if your goal is to get it perfect at launch, you're setting yourself up for failure. I think what's more important and what we see clients having a lot of success with is do your homework, do the research, look at the data that's available to you. So if you're an existing business that's looking to roll out a new pricing model, you have reams of data over the past few years about how your product's being used by which customers and which demographics, delivering which outcomes by vertical potentially. And really the magic is being able to harness that data effectively to figure out what is the optimum model to go to market with and what is a value metric that you can tie your revenue to that your customers are going to experience an outcome for. And my belief over the past 15 years of helping companies do this is that it's really all about removing friction from the sales process. And what I mean by that is if you're selling a solution by number of seats or by one of the more common metrics out there, and your solution, the outcome your customer is perceiving isn't really well aligned with that metric, then you're going to have a lot of red tape to get through to get a deal signed. You're going to have companies deciding to not enable other teams in the business on your platform because maybe the same outcome isn't delivered per seat over there. But really what's important is if you are in market already and you have the data, use that data to drive your decision making. If you are a startup and you're launching a new or you're launching a completely new product you don't have the data on, then there is a bit of an art and science and hypothesis process and business canvas exercise that you're going to need to go through. But the real key is to remain agile because even if you were to get it perfect at launch, in 12 months, the market conditions are going to change. Your buyers are going to change. The competitive landscape in your market may change. And really the key to success is trying to get as close as you can to perfect at launch, but have the systems and business tools in place that when you do detect an anomaly or something unexpected, that you have the ability to make fine-tune adjustments to really optimize.
Cool. So I think there's a couple things in there I wanted to tease away at. So one is determining what your value metric is, and the other one was kind of looking at your target market. So talk a little bit about how do you determine what your value metric is and your target audience? Because obviously there's a lot of complications between competitors, what their pricing models look like, how you differentiate, where's your value that you offer to your customer, and then kind of that target demographic that you can go after. So what are some of the different types of strategies or things that you should be looking at for kind of figuring out those different value metrics?
So start talking to your customers would be my first suggestion because they're the ones that can give you real world advice based on their experience. And talk to your sales team. When you're presenting your pricing model with 5 different variables on it, what are the 2 variables that are always the sticking points? And how can you make adjustments to those variables to, again, remove that friction from the sales process? So the whole concept of pricing evolution is how do we drive growth faster and how do we improve customer experience? And it has to be an iterative process. And we find a lot of companies get stuck, especially when they build their own system, in that they have a very regimented set of requirements of what they'd like to go to market with. It takes them a year to build the system and get it in market. The problem is during that year, the market's evolved and they're continuously playing catch up there rather than having their resources focus exclusively on you know, as you mentioned, how do we better define what outcomes our solution's driving in which market for which types of users? And how do we lean as much revenue in our model towards those metrics as we can without inflicting risk to the business with sunk costs? Or, you know, we see a lot of situations where companies will have one metric in their pricing model that really is what drives their cost internally, and they're afraid to get away from that because they're afraid to be underwater on a deal. The challenge is your customer doesn't really care too much where your costs are driven from. Again, they care what value their business is seeing from your solution. And, you know, minimum commit plus usage, or what people commonly refer to as a platform fee now, is what we've seen businesses use as a tool to get around that problem. I think I caught
Yeah, I think
all
so.
the
I think
answer to that
was
question there.
And
I tend to ramble.
So I think the interesting thing in that, and you mentioned, you know, some people will come with, okay, here's my set pricing, here are the things that I am wanting to do, and all the different ways and the variations in which I want to price my product. But at the same time, you're pointing out that usually there's a couple of key value metrics in there that the customer perceives out of your pricing. So I think one of the pitfalls, or maybe it is or isn't, is too complex a pricing and too many options an issue? Should it be more simplistic? You know, what have you
Great
seen?
question.
What have you seen kind of in that realm?
I think it really depends on who you're selling to, what you're selling, and how you're selling it. So, as an example, if you are a small sales team selling an enterprise software solution to a niche market, you likely are not going to be able to get away from some of that complexity, but that's probably okay because you have a small sales team to train and you have a lot of control over how they're communicating to customers and so on and so forth. If you have a distribution model, let's say, is you're on the far other end of the spectrum. You're going to need simplicity because the sales team that's out pushing your product doesn't have 3 to 6 months to get up to speed on how to pitch and how to sell and how to close your pricing model. They need something quick and easy. They need, you know, a 2-page sales process. Here's the value props. Here's the solutions we're solving. And here's the simple pricing model that comes along with it. So I don't think there's one answer to the question. I think in general, of course, I would suggest simplicity is better than complexity because, again, it's going to make the sales process easier if the customer, you know, intimately understands what the price is early on. But if you're selling Boeing jets or you're selling custom machinery, you know, wild example, that's just not going to be an option for you because your product just doesn't lend itself to that. Yeah. So I think a lot of companies need to be more honest with themselves. You know, how complex is my product? What is my risk of simplifying? Right? Am I going to leave money on the table? Am I going to potentially shrink margins? Under what circumstances will that happen? You know, and what sort of fences can I put around the pricing model to maybe protect us from those pitfalls? You know, a common one is organizations that price on a per seat basis and are not measuring usage. Oftentimes, they will put an acceptable use policy in place, which is a kind of big gray area, an easy way to say it's unlimited unless we deem you're using it too heavily. But it's become common practice. We see other organizations that have totally made the shift. HubSpot is a good example that I really like. HubSpot does not license per user. They license based on the number of contacts, at least for the marketing automation side of the platform. And I think it's a really good example because a lot of competitors to HubSpot offer a per user licensing model. And you know, when they go into an organization, the organization has to decide, well, which people am I going to have access? Which people am I going to provide access to this business tool that I've purchased? And what they tend to do is they tend to shrink the footprint of the people that get to use and learn that solution as small as possible because that's what's driving their cost. But it's really not what's driving the outcome for them. So what happens is they'll have their marketing team will have access to HubSpot, but the customer success team, as an example, will not. Well, even though it may only be 20% more valuable when the customer success team is in there, that's 20% that HubSpot competitors totally giving up on. And I think they've come up with a creative way. They measure based on number of contacts. And I think there's some really tight alignment between the value that solution is delivering in that context and that model.
Yeah. So I think, you've mentioned a couple of, we'll call them kind of more traditional types of pricing models, right? Straight subscription, usage, or user-based, right? Seat-based, plain usage, right? Just how many contacts and things that are going through the system. I just wondering if you could, describe some other different types of upcoming pricing models that you've been finding for, we talk to a lot of customers that are just starting to get into the usage space, trying to figure out how, again, right? If my current services have been based off of a cost plus model, how am I going to start to dip my toe into usage? How do I get my customers trying out some of my different services? Just wondering if you're hearing different kind of pricing models that you're hearing from the industry that they're trying to move towards.
So we're sensing a big desire for many industries to move towards a usage-based model. That means very different things to everybody, it seems. The pure usage one works great when you have a utility type solution. So Snowflake, great example out there. AWS, Azure, all the cloud providers, effectively great example. Pure usage, the market's used to it. They tie a direct line to the outcome being delivered, to how many services are being consumed on those platforms. Many organizations are having trouble trying to find how to make the shift to usage. They know their customers are asking the sales team for it. They know the sales team's asking the product team, oh boy, we wish we could sell this thing on a usage model because I could really increase the number of logos that we're signing. And everyone's going after net dollar retention in market these days. A beautiful way to do that is to get someone in at a low price, have them have a great customer experience, and onboard them really well, and have them consume more, and you're going to drive a great net dollar retention, and the market's going to reward you for that, even in this crazy turmoil we're seeing in the tech markets these days. One tool or idea that I think's really been copied from the cloud providers, and we're starting to see it venture into many new markets, is the idea of having a financial commitment across any services you may consume, where I'm not committing to the number of seats my organization's going to utilize. I'm not committing to the number of API calls for a certain service that my organization's going to utilize. But I will commit that we will commit a minimum spend of $50,000 per year for 3 years. And I just want to pay for things as I use them. AWS's Enterprise Discount Program, or EDP, is a perfect example of this. And what's beautiful about it is the customer gets some predictability on their spend, which is what makes them nervous to move to a usage model, because they're not really sure exactly which services they're going to consume at what velocity, especially early on. It gives the selling organization some forecasting flexibility. I know I'm going to have $50,000 revenue to recognize at least by the end of the year, and maybe earlier if I can properly onboard the customer and the sales team when after the right target, which is important. But the thing a lot of companies are missing is the real beauty of this is you have one sales motion with the upfront to gain the customer, and then it becomes a customer service, customer success exercise after that. And when you decide to roll a new product out into market, you don't need to go get another contract signed with the customer. They're already signed to consume it. They just see it available in the API library. They go read some documentation. They have a little onboarding session. They read your release newsletter maybe. And now you can more efficiently scale because you can tweak your usage model. You can tweak the offerings in market without having to go through all the red tape of contracting and legal every time you decide to do something new.
Yeah, let them kind of taste, all the little bits of the services that you offer without, getting into, I'm going to commit to how much I'm going to use out of that service. No, I just want to try a little bit of that. Maybe we've got a prototype or a POC that we've got moving in the company, and I just want to kind of taste my way into some of those services. Yep,
and they align really well with what everyone used to call a freemium model that now the market is labeled product-led growth. And effectively that's the concept of try to get end users into your product with as little friction as possible. Let them spawn their own tenant off the website, let them download and try a tool you may have, and then watch how it's being used. And don't have your sales team bombarding them trying to close a deal. Have your sales team enabling them to get a better experience using it, and watch how the product's being used. Again, great usage model. You're not billing the usage, but you're deriving important business data from the usage. Once a customer loads the 50th action into our platform, we're going to trigger a tutorial email video maybe to be sent to the customer. Once they trigger the 100th interaction in the system, we're going to have a product expert give them a call and see if they need any additional training. And rather than selling, we're going to be helping them buy. And I'm a strong believer that's what the market wants today.
Awesome. Well, I think that's the main topics that I wanted to cover today. So I just want to thank you for sharing your insights and the types of conversations that you're having with customers in the field. So I want to thank everybody for joining in today's video, and stay tuned for other ones that we may have in the series.
Thank you.